on. Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It is amazing. We are live on 3 networks right now. We are live on YouTube, we are live on Periscope, and we are live on Facebook. So if you're checking out any platform right now, you're welcome to throw a comment in the comment section on whatever platform you are. We'll get to comments as we go. Last week, we did a different type of an intro, and I promised I wouldn't do that too often. But I do have another rant for y'all this week, and it's definitely about COVID, and I won't spoil any more than that. But tonight, we're actually going to do something a little bit different that we haven't done in a little while. We have a guest on that's going to join us in just a minute. And I'm going to tell a little quick story, and I'm going to then I'll bring everybody into the cast. Because this gentleman, and I just started using Twitter again about 2 weeks ago on a more daily basis because I'm getting sick of Facebook and I find Twitter a better forum to have conversations with. And I came across a concession video and I watched it and I was like, I don't quite understand exactly what this is, but I have to retweet this because this is literally the best concession video I've ever seen in my life, ever. Just hands down. Like usually candidates will come on and say, yeah, thanks, I'll do better next year. And this one's epic. And we will play the video. We will play the video for you all tonight. So to begin with, we're going to have a half-hour interview with the gentleman candidate out of Washington. And then after that, we're going to kind of get into answering a conservative question. And then we're going to talk about election fraud because I can't help. I promised last week we do a Canada show. We did a Canada show. Now we're doing an election fraud show because I can't help myself. But without further ado, let me bring my co-hosts in. Welcome, Mr. Hansel, the engineer, and Buddy the elf.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm not an elf, but I don't know why I'm channeling my inner Duchovny on that one. I'm no Goldblum. Wow, it's a Monday.
Just calm down and chew on some frozen syrup.
The other thing that we're going to be doing, folks, is we are going to a permanent Monday night at 10 p.m. That wasn't with scotch, was it?
No, that was bottle lid. Gross.
10 p.m. Time for the show. So all of our video casts you will be able to see live at 10 p.m. every Monday night. But without further ado, let's bring our guest on. Please welcome to the show, Liam O'Mara. And I apologize if I butcher your name. I'm not a names guy. How are you tonight, sir?
Great. It's totally fine. I generally don't even tell people, like, I don't care how they say the name, but I say O'Mara. So
O'Mara.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
No, you had it right, Tanner.
I am actually in California, not Washington.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were in Washington.
Yeah, no worry. West Coast still,
Yeah.
Got
so
that
you
part.
must be in the conservative Washington area then.
Well, I'm in inland Southern California.
Gotcha.
So I'm pretty heavily in Trump country. That was actually what ended up hurting this particular run was we were well within normal win numbers, but the Republican turnout was really above average, so very far above it. And that's really just because it was seen as a referendum on Trump, and they wanted as many votes as they could.
Well, and if you think about it, I mean, I think Trump told us that all of those extra votes were fraud votes. So maybe you did win, and we just
exactly. Yeah. So all the late votes they were counting. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, it's faked. Yeah.
Well, a couple of things I want to do to begin with before we get into the video that drew me to your campaign, and I will apologize. I had not heard of your campaign. You know, we're from Michigan, and the guy at the bottom right is from Canada. So,
I'm Ohio.
We're not all. You're from Michigan.
We come in peace.
We're not all up on the California politics. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know California had conservative pockets until a friend of mine went there, and he's no, I live in Trump country, and I'm like, what? What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. And so anyway, so tell everybody a little bit about yourself, the district you represent, and what you're kind of like a high level overview of yourself.
Yeah, I'll start with the district since we were just talking about it. People do tend to forget that California is just as diverse as all the other states in the union. The urban areas are overwhelmingly Democratic, and the rural areas are Republican. That means most of Northern California is solidly Republican, and all the inland area, all the way through the state, is Republican as well. It's just that we have such a large population, and a lot of that is concentrated in cities all on the coast. That's why we have so many more Democrats than Republicans. But it has the same basic breakdown you see everywhere else. In all the red states, there are huge blue pockets around the cities. Same basic thing here. My district is sort of suburban to the LA Orange County metropolitan area. We're just immediately over the mountains from this giant sprawling city that runs through multiple counties. And that means that there's a ton of bedroom communities out here where people have moved because the houses are a little cheaper and they just commute in for work. But we've never really developed a lot of local industry. It still depends overwhelmingly on like warehousing and logistics jobs. So we get all the pollution and traffic and whatnot, but no economic benefit. And poverty stays stubbornly high. And the further you get away from the freeway, the more overwhelmingly rural it is. There's a lot of farms still in my district. So there's a pocket, a strip all along the freeway where it's all these cities that are built up that are almost entirely houses, and then a big open nothing. So it's a really interesting microcosm as a district, and you do have to, be able to talk to very different audiences to do that. For me, I'm a historian of ideas by profession. So I study like big systems of thought. My regional specializations are in Middle East and Europe. So I'm heavily involved in a lot of discussions of like, Mideast politics and history all the time. So it's like religions, culture, something like that. But what gets me into politics, well, is a combination of my personal background and where the country has been going for a while. The personal part is I was the first person in my family to go to college at all, like to get a degree. And I powered through 3 degrees in a row because I'm stupid, whatever. It's crazy. I guess I didn't mind having a massive mortgage worth of debt around my neck for the rest of my life. Because poor people are not supposed to do PhDs, I guess. It's way too expensive at this point, but whatever. But I didn't get into college until I was 30. So I started very late. But I got back in with a wealth of job experience in the working class. I was a longshoreman. I was a fry cook. I had a Class A truck driving license for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And, and now my world is quite different. I'm an academic, but to me, there's this interesting kind of split there where I'm not really comfortable with a lot of people in academia because of the working class origins. I still think of myself as, I still wear steel toes. That's where I'm from, but I'm now teaching all the time. Mm-hmm. But in teaching, I have to look my students in the eyes and tell them you're screwed. Because we 40 years of neoliberal economics have undermined our real economy. And the media has been lying to us systematically for decades, telling people that, job creation numbers are good, the stock market's good, the economy's great, and making people feel that it's somehow their fault that they're not doing well. And it's turned to even like a bunch of generational crap. We had all that millennials live at home in their parents' basements or whatever. They're entitled and lazy. And no, they're not. They work as hard as every other generation of Americans. We just don't pay them enough. Because we've undermined the real economy. And I'm tired of explaining to people that we're on our 3rd generation in a row of decline. And I don't want to tell people to get used to that. I want to fight back.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing that a lot of people don't see that. They only focus on what's in front of them, right? And so a little background on me. Mm-hmm. I grew up in an ultra-conservative household. My father is pull you up by your bootstrap. We're white, right? But my father grew up very poor. Right, that was his lot in life. That was just the way they were. My father his parents would give away Sunday dinner to homeless people sometimes before they ate as kids. Right. So my dad believed every penny counted. In fairness, I attended a private school, all this other stuff, but I was a poor kid at the private school. I had hand-me-down clothes. Everybody's got Gucci's and those little alligator shirts that Polo and you just love.
Alistair?
Yeah.
But I grew up the same way. It was always pull yourself up. And even to this day, my dad has a really hard time accepting that side of it, that, well, everybody should just be able to do it.
Yeah. And honestly, we have a very similar family background in that sense. My family was all working class and had all managed to do that. And that really was the American dream for so long. You could come here and have a better life. And that's what people did. I'm, I guess, fifth generation American. My great-great-grandparents migrated here from Poland, Sicily, and Ireland. And they all worked hard and their kids did better. And they worked hard and their kids did better. But after the boomers, that actually stops.
It does.
I mean, my mother was still able to do it. I mean, my parents split. We weren't particularly well off, but she saved every penny. She did actually manage to get me into private schools too. So I did 12 years of Catholic school.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thankful for the educational quality at least, but a very interesting social environment. But she worked hard to do that. I mean, it was difficult, and we gave up a lot. But my family had that same idea that you help out other people, we all work hard, and we'll all do well. But we changed the rules. The boomers had it easier than most generations in American history, and Gen X is the first one to do worse as a generation in our entire history. And every generation after has been worse off. And it's not because we're getting lazy as a culture, it's because the rules were changed.
I agree. The rules, so the idea of class mobility used to be part of the American dream. You honestly could get your education. You could get your education that was no longer being underfunded. In fact, it was being overfunded. We used to have one of the greatest education systems in the world, and we stopped in creating a cookie cutter world, and we didn't innovate. And then we saw economic value drive into the private sector. And once the Reaganomics started in, when the boomers took position in government, it was essentially the Reaganomics era, and we saw a massive migration of capital into the private sector, away from our public institutions. The reasons we were so powerful and strong and good, had a healthy, beefy middle class, and 90% tax rate, 90% progressive tax rate during the Cold War, and you see all of those changes, and I'm definitely very happy that that's something that you're aware of. It's like coming in as an academic, and we hear a lot of people coming in throwing the taglines out, the words, what is it? Wall Street isn't the real economy. You hear a lot of that kind of stuff, but there's a reason. There's a reason that things have flipped from 70% manufacturing, 20%, 20% service, and 10% speculation, and it's flipped now. It's now 70 to almost 80% speculation, maybe 10 to 15,
90,
maybe
actually.
I mean, it's really high.
It was about 90-10 real economy and speculation back in the 60s. It's completely reversed now.
Yeah, it's
Wall Street has almost
over.
No bearing on our economy, and that is borne out in the real the outcomes for people. We don't have that direct investment, and so the tax rate you mentioned, right? The high tax rate. A lot of progressives misunderstand the whole point of that. They think that the high tax rate on the rich is to get money to fund social programs and help the poverty and everything else there. What it really does is it sets the incentives right in the economy, because if they know the tax rate is such there, they're not going to give themselves the massive compensation packages, and they're not going to offshore the capital. They're going to invest it in their damn business, because that's the only way to get rich. And that puts money in our hands and raises our pay. As soon as they cut taxes on the rich, our pay flatlined, and it's been flat for 40 freaking years for 75% of the economy. That has to change. But yeah, you mentioned social mobility. We're 27th in the world.
I don't know.
I mean, and that's hard to explain to people. Like, we're the greatest country in the world. We're 27th in social mobility.
Yeah.
So question then is this the historian side of you that comes out? Because I guarantee you probably get a lot of questions. Why should historians run, for Congress, right? And I've argued this before a lot, that we should have more educators in the White House, in the Senate, and in our House of Representatives. And I only say that because we put, for example, for the last 4 years, and just if you haven't figured out, we're a pretty ultra leftist show. Just so you know ahead of time, like we're not a middle of the road Biden show. That's not us.
Neither am I.
Okay, good. Well, we fit very well together. So. One of the commitments we made was to, we'll vote Biden because we have to get rid of the menace. But the idea is now our goal for our show is to bring progressive politics back in and say, okay, how do we change this movement? And we've preached for at least 4 years on this show. I think we've done this 4 years now.
Yeah.
But for 4 years, we've been preaching that you can't take a White House with a progressive candidate very easily. It's just not going to happen. But you could slowly take over local governments. You could slowly take over your House, your Senate, and you can start moving some of that around. So tell us why you feel a historian belongs in the education in the government.
Well, in addition to like the intro,
yes.
I mean, I don't know. I think we need more headbangers in Congress. Can I say that?
I would agree 100%.
Don't threaten me with a good time, pal.
Yep.
Don't
Man,
threaten me with a good
I
time.
want to be the first one in the house with a death metal theme song.
Oh,
Okay.
Walk into the house,
Quick
think you're
sidebar.
accepted.
What song would it be that you walked into?
Oh gosh, my unofficial campaign theme song has been "Live Without Regrets" by Amon Amarth.
Okay.
Charge into battle, like don't look back.
All right. I can't
Valhalla.
play that on the show.
It's
but-
a good day to die. Valhalla. See some blue
Exactly.
potato
Yeah.
chips.
Don't play around like second guessing this. Forward, charge forward. That's
Damn it.
anyway. Okay, so there's certain things you brought up that are kind of important there. See if I can get back to the third one. The first part is like why? Okay, historians and educators.
Mhm.
I'm actually going to draw a line between them because we need both. And it so happens that I'm both, but that's beside the point. I think we need historians and we need educators. We need historians because we need more holistic perspective on things. There are way too many people in Congress that don't have a freaking clue how anything works. They tend to think of the federal government like, oh, it's just like my household budget or it's just like my shoe store or something. And no, it's not. They don't work the same way. Like just because they have numbers involved, they're completely different issues. We have to be able to look at the bigger picture and explain it well. And I think a lot of progressives fail in this because they will talk about the right ideas, but they can't defend them. They can't explain them. So when someone comes up and says, well, how does that work? How do you pay for that? They have no answers. And a historian can do that. Scholars in general can do that because we're used to looking at the details. But that gets to the educator part. You have to be able to explain it to your audience. And we're used to taking complex ideas and breaking them down in a way that makes sense. So somebody can say like, well, how do you pay for this Green New Deal thing? It seems like a waste of money. It's like, no, it's actually going to make money and grow the economy. Just like, the space race, we didn't have to raise taxes in the space race and we put a man on the freaking moon and it gave us computers. You can basically show them how it works in quick little elevator speeches if you understand the systems themselves. And a lot of progressives don't. They're unwilling to talk about economics. And I think that ceding the ground on the economy to Republicans has been disastrous for this country. They've either given up and not talked about it at all, which means they're able to run. I mean, I don't know, Reagan took tons of like the labor vote in the 80s. Trump ran as a right populist. They're talking to working class voters, but they're selling them snake oil. And instead of countering that by talking about economics, too many Democrats either go in the same direction and talk about the same kind of neoliberal garbage, or they talk about it in just broad generalities and platitudes. Like they don't really get how it works. So I think
they can't get too specific because the Democrats basically had to absorb everybody but the very small, very vocal, and very intense Republican base, which is white evangelicals and their I guess small variations therein. But like the Democrats are so worried about losing any part of their base that they have to just speak in these broad generalities.
But they don't have to. It's a choice. And it's the wrong one. In the early 70s, they decided to focus on cities and college-educated professionals, and they abandoned the working class. I mean, Democrats used to sweep the heartland of this country, and they could again. Democrats would absolutely take all the seats in Kansas, Nebraska, Montana. Instead, we've now given up even the local offices. I love that. That's the third part I love that you're focusing on there because it's attention to the presidency. Yeah, Bernie would have been fantastic. I wish he'd won in 2016. In some ways he did because at least he mainstreamed talking about healthcare. Yeah. He brought the discussion, he changed the discussion a bit, but that's ultimately there wouldn't be that much he could do. I mean, even with an imperial presidency, you don't really affect the economy in any direct way, but state houses and the Congress do. And Democrats used to control 3/4 of state houses, and we have 1/3 of them now. And that's ridiculous.
Yeah, the Tea Party's strategy for working on gerrymandering and the money that they spent in 2010 elections completely changed the idea. They basically said, let's do this from the state and local level. And they were very, very smart. I've been so frustrated for the last decade watching them just steamroll strategically over the Democratic Party. It's been very frustrating. Chris actually worked on a local campaign up here and increased significantly the amount of vote that this gentleman had gotten. And the first time he had gone through, like, seen real progress, obviously in a national election like this, bringing all of the presidential turmoil out there brings a lot more people out. So I think in an off year, in 2022, we probably see a standard number coming out, but hopefully maybe people will take the local stuff seriously, because your case, we saw a lot of people like you that were running and trying to make changes, but we also saw the Republicans make gains in the House, and it's basically 50-50 in the Senate. And it might go one way or the other, but it's going to be a deadlock everywhere now, because the margin is single digits, which is the smallest margin we've had in the House in decades. And in the Senate, it's not going to be decisive either way. It'd be really great if we had a tiny majority for the Democrats and the Democratic presidents, but I highly suspect Georgia is going to be able to give us that. So we saw losses at the local level, and unfortunately, people like you, you're pushing out there, but you're really pushing against headwinds. You're not getting a lot of support from the rest of the progressive base. I don't know where they are. They all came out and voted for the president, but apparently they didn't give a crap about who they were electing in their local elections.
Well, yes and no. It depends on what you can build up in terms of your local support, your local voters. But national attention also helps as well. I mean, it's absolutely crucial to fundraising. If you want to put progressives in, it's the small dollar fundraising all around the country that keeps these races going. But we lost seats in the House, but they were all blue dogs and New Dems. Progressives running in red and purple districts actually got really close despite record turnout for Trump. In any normal year, I could have won this or been so close. It would have been like a razor thin margin. But the turnout was just massive for them. I mean, the last presidential election year we had in this district, the Democrat took 104,000 votes. 4 years. Well, the total electorate was like 380, 390, something like that. It was pretty bad, but turnout was not great either. It was in the mid 60s. We had turnout in the mid 70s here, but I took so far, and there's still a few votes left to count. It's at 139,000. Wow. Nothing's come close to that, and that's actually and my incumbent won in the midterm 2 years ago with only 130,000 votes, which means if you can excite the same people and keep them to come back out when Trump isn't there, but Trump isn't there to motivate the Republican base, there's a real shot on these purple around the country. If it wasn't for the Trump phenomenon, Kerry Eastman would have won in Nebraska. Yeah, there's a lot of people that came pretty darn close, or like Siegel or Oliver in Texas, where they're running in red districts, but they're running on the right kind of messaging. And the more you can connect with people and explain that, I have a lot of self-identified conservatives and Republicans who voted for me. And I have people who told me, I'm voting for Trump and you.
See, and I think that's a key, there, right? And this is what I was trying to explain to the candidate I work with, is that, we're here to be more progressive than, Biden, right? If we get Biden votes, great. But that was funny because he was just running for the local House just for the state of Michigan, right? And just a little bit different of a race, a lot smaller. But when we were going through the numbers and the statistics and the discussion points and who do we hit, where do we send our marketing campaigns for, how do we target ads, I did the numbers after the election. And my wife, she sent me a text. She goes, hey, I have somebody that gave me the vote breakdown already. And the candidate inside of Zeeland area where I live, which is just east of Holland and west of Grand Rapids, which normally is all red. It's almost always 100%. Like, very rarely do you get a lot of votes in this area for Democrats, period. But he actually ended up getting more votes than Biden did in my city. Now, when you go to the outskirts, no. And that's what swung everything, right? But still inside of the city, it was exciting to see that. And he ran on higher amounts of, progressive policies. I mean, he was very aggressive about education reform. That was a big thing for him. He was also very aggressive about, campaigning to ensure equality, because he's sick of seeing people talk about black vote or Black Lives Matter. He actually wants to see it happen, and he's black himself. So for him, it works out. He has the background. He could tell you like stories of like the poor parts of his life, and he could tell you this discrimination stories like you wouldn't believe. And anyway, so I think you're right. I think that we have to focus on, we're progressive, but we're not really this Democratic Party, right? We are this party that wants to push everything to the left, but we're going to do it in a humanistic way. Our goal is to move policies towards humanism.
Right, exactly. And the key really for me is it really lies in the populist rhetoric that Trump is echoing here. And there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstandings from the liberal intelligentsia, the basic orthodoxy you see in the media and in the Democratic Party, that associates populism only with authoritarianism. So we think of it like as it relates to Trump or something, or to like the old fascist movements or something. But we completely forget that the populist movement in the late 19th and early 20th century was deeply progressive, very forward-thinking, very pro-science, very pro-education. It was pro-expertise. It wasn't like education bad, like a lot of the right populism is. The key to it is the emphasis on working people, on kitchen table economics, which means I want to talk about how I can make your lives better. I want to talk about the basic kitchen table stuff that everyone can relate to. And if you focus there, that gets attention. That gets votes. It does get support. I actually saw one of your commenters through one of the people following through a comment in that Republicans voted down ballot. That's actually not true in my district. The turnout for Trump for the presidential is at 75%. The turnout for the actual congressional seat is only 71. There are a lot of people who walked in only to tick the box for Biden or Trump and walked out.
That's one of the things that I've been wondering happened in a lot of cases. It's kind of frustrating to imagine, coming in and just leaving the rest of the ballot blank. And that's a motivation and an understanding that people need to have. Like, we need to have the Democratic Party excited. Who are your local people? Who do you have? So I voted from home for the first time, the last two ballots that I sent in for the last two, for the primary and for the general election. And I can't tell you how wonderful that was to sit down, crack open a beer, get your phone out, spend an hour and a half going over every name on there, Google them, see their platform, see what they've got. Like that kind, I've never been more basically informed for my election ever. I've never had the time to really sit down and do that. I really, really like the idea of that being something that's this year is the first year in history that we've seen, a majority of mail-in ballots. Did you guys see a lot of that mail-in, and was it good, bad? Did we see the idea of like, if you give everyone the ballot, mail-in, it's going to be a boost to liberals who can't get off work. They can't, they'll show up because they can just mail something in. Did you see any dynamics there on that?
Mail-in is usually pretty common for us in California because we've had it for a long time. Yeah. You can sign up as what they call a permanent absentee voter, and they just mail it to you every single election. And a lot of people do that. There was actually a slight decrease in the use of it, especially among Republicans, because of so much of the Trump rhetoric against the mail. So some of them went on election day. So there was a big chunk there. But as the votes started trickling in from the mail, we saw significant increases in our share for a while. But even there, a ton of the Republicans voted entirely by mail, but that's normal for us. And there's a lot of places where where it's been that way for quite some time. And honestly, it should be that way everywhere. Oregon's had it for 20 years.
I know.
And all this talk about fraud and whatnot, I mean, vote fraud is already like, what is it? 0.0000006% of the ballots are fraudulent, but it's actually lower for mail-in. They eliminate more actually valid ballots because the signature isn't perfect, or this wasn't missing, or that was missing, or so it's actually safer in that sense. I don't get why we don't push it, and it does give people the opportunity to look at things.
I've seen basically, from my understanding, the way a lot of manipulation of voting happens, I find it more in the messaging and confusing people, and essentially tapping into their intellectual and the inconsistencies in the way the human mind works to basically confuse people, scare them, try to change their perspective. That itself, and the marketing and the messaging, that to me is more of a thing where you actually see an actual effect in what happens. Like the voting itself, the reason the idea of fraud in your district probably didn't see any kind of fraud is that it's so hard. If you look at our American voting system, it's so decentralized that you would essentially have to completely create an entirely new way to steal every single tiny little district. It's so insanely complex that it's not really possible to hack the system. What you can do is you can hack people's minds using all of our media stuff. So I guess one other thing to bring into this is the money. Did you see a lot of big money coming in your district? Because that's the one thing that changed. You talk about kitchen table economics.
He did. The Republican guy. Sure.
Exactly.
But like kitchen table economics gets run over by big money when it comes in.
Right. And, we did better with small dollar fundraising than people have done before, but you're still, you get massively outspent. But my incumbent is 98% funded by corporations. So he's taken in massive contributions from Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin and all that, so he can vote for every war and every military budget and all that. He is essentially a tool of the military industrial complex.
Yeah,
but he gives them money to send out tons of really dishonest mailers. They were hilarious too. He kept running in like big glossy mailers, and he was using like an old personal picture they stole off my Facebook. Because I used to have a beard down to my navel, so it's like big beard down, long hair out there, big cowboy hat on. It's like, what the hell is this?
Oh, wow.
And I actually, a lot of people say like, I had no idea you were running, but I'm voting for you because of that picture. Like, okay, cool. But he was thinking to like scare people. But what's important is not the picture; it's all the really dishonest arguments that he made in them. They're just constantly twisting statements and then identifying me with positions that I don't actually have or have ever said. But you send out a dozen mailers and a bunch of radio ads, which you can afford if you raise $2 million. People are going to be motivated by that.
And people don't always check into the history. Like they'll hear something, and if you get that seed planted, we've talked about this as a skeptical, atheist, non-believer community. Like we talk about the storytellers and the people that can tell a really good story. You plant the seeds in people to kind of change their mind. But also, if you're the first person to throw a little thing into the tunnel there, and it bangs around a little bit, like if he puts something out there and the first thing they hear about you is that one thing, that first impression is always slightly different, and it's so hard to fix it.
Exactly. And money really does have a significant impact on our politics because of that. If you can just swamp the airwaves with something, it doesn't matter how dishonest it is. Again, it's an old technique of propaganda. You repeat the lie often enough, people are going to believe it. But really,
we've always been at war with Oceania.
It's really just the money and the advertising that does it for a lot of people, because they really often don't even know the politicians. We have an unusual circumstance, or it's rather an unusual extreme, in that our incumbent hasn't done a town hall in more than 10 years.
Ugh.
He does nothing in the district at all. He shows up for a whole bunch of tweets and whatnot regularly in the months leading up to the election. There's signs everywhere. There's radio ads. And then he disappears completely and only serves as corporate donors. He does not care. And a lot of Republicans despise him. Right. And they're quite vocal about that. But he's the one they've got because no one can afford to run a primary challenge against him. And they have a negative association with Democrats because of this neoliberal garbage we've been pushing since the Clinton era. So we're just not, well, even before, we're just not connecting to people. And a lot of the stuff that happens on the national stage affects the local. And what we need to do is flip it back around. So I love that you have that emphasis on local races, because if we can win those arguments street to street, person to person, and get them to say, like, look, we understand the situation you're in. We can make life better for you, and here is how, and win that way, it can force things to change on the national level. Ultimately, things like the DNC and the DCCC are made up of current and former electeds. Yeah. If we get more people into office, we take control of those institutions. They were not always like this. This shift only happened in the 70s, and we can get back to that New Deal emphasis.
Well, I think that's super important to do, though. And I think that's the funny thing is, the media is so capitalistic in how it's driven, right? You know, like our show is driven. You know, you want to be able to afford to put this type of production on. Stop it. Leave me alone. I'm not Trump. I'm not doing this. I'm not like out here doing this. All right.
Jazz
Moving on.
hands.
I'm not that jazzy. So, but you know, like to do these things, it costs money, right? So you either pay out of your pocket, you get Patreons, you get people to subscribe, all these other things, and you know how you do that? You get populist people on, right? You get somebody that, like, if we had Joe Biden on here, I'm sure we get 1 million views. And you know, to be frank, I don't give a flying poop. I don't know if I can cuss that with yours or not.
I'm pretty sure you've already.
But I don't give a crap, honestly, about having him on, other than I need the capitalist dollars views to bring in so I can make the show more popular, because then I can bring in more candidates that are worthwhile talking with.
Right.
And like you're worthwhile having a conversation with, because I don't really care what Biden's going to do, because I don't think he's going to do very much personally. You know, last week was my Warren week.
We have to force him from below to change things, because his instincts are all wrong for us. And yeah, this will be another one-term president if we can't push things from below and make real changes. You know, it's going to flip back around. The fact that these margins were so close in a lot of states should be terrifying to people. If they think a resounding victory, they're fooling themselves. Yeah. And that really, it does come down to us and what we can push from below, where we can go. But yeah, honestly, I have to say, I love doing shows like this, and I love that you guys are doing this, because we need an alternative. I mean, if you think about just how people could get their message out before. Think about, okay, so landslide, right? You hear that term landslide a lot with elections. It's a landslide victory. You know when the last landslide was we had? 1984. Everyone after that has been actually quite close. And oftentimes, like, you know, the person without a majority of votes has been winning too.
Yeah,
the
last two Republican.
Both of Clinton's terms, he was less than 50%. He had 43 and 49%. You know, and then W. Bush obviously didn't make it. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But it's always so close, and it's close because it all comes down to who spends more money on propaganda rather than getting real news to people. It's not a coincidence that it happened there, because Reagan heavily deregulated the media. And they don't have to present anything fairly anymore. They can be as partisan as they want in their presentation of the news. That was
Rush Limbaugh on the fairness doctrine.
Right, exactly. You know, and there are major changes made under Reagan, and actually Bill Clinton made it a little worse. You know, with more consolidation there. But between the two of them, we don't have a free media anymore, and we used to. The First Amendment on paper gives us the freest media in the world, but we are by far the most heavily propagandized population in the developed world. And it's because of the massive corporate consolidation and the complete lack of regulation. So I love this kind of like become the media sort of idea.
Well, let me know when you move to Ohio. I'll vote for you. Gosh.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, everything we can do to kind of like at least get the word out. And honestly, I've been doing this for years, and I'm glad that more and more people are taking that up. Just small dollar recurring donations to progressives running in tight districts all around this country work. You know, if we had poured more money into like Mike Siegel's and Julie Oliver's campaign, and they could have afforded the radio ads they needed, they could have won those seats. You know, there's tons of people running on really good ideas. And honestly, I'm always trying to tell people, and so you have a pretty left perspective. So I'll point out that I tend to think that we have a kind of learned helplessness on the populist and left wing in our politics here, and we just look at the massive money the right can spend. Oh, they can dump $100,000 into it. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? But the price of a coffee a month adds up, and we tend to think, well, I've only got $5. They don't need that. Well, they do. If you set up a recurring donation of $5 a month, and then you convince 3 friends to do it, and they convince 3 friends to do it, a few thousand people giving nothing more than $5 a month is enough to win almost any House race in this entire country, to say nothing of the assembly races, the state House races. If you get a few thousand people donating $5 a month, you can compete with the big many people.
Yep.
And we need to get that out there and get people to understand that we do have power if we work together and if we pick the right races and throw our cash at them.
Exactly.
That's awesome. That's so nice to be able to override Citizens United just through small donations.
Let people power, and you absolutely can. You know,
that's
it does not take that much.
It's his little king. Anything to overpower Citizens United. So I know we promised we'd only keep you for 20 minutes to a half hour, and we're at 40 minutes. Before I let you go, I have to play the video that drew me to your campaign, and then I need a little bit of commentary from you on the video, and then you got to tell everybody where they can support you and when how they can help you when you run next. Well, I guess technically your campaign starts now. So
yeah, it's rolling over. Yep.
Mystery Science 3000. Let's do this.
The beard, it just throws me off.
Wish my hair grew like that.
I know that.
Never judge a book by its cover.
Or a man by the dreads in his beard.
Oh,
right,
I needed that.
Before we go any farther, okay. So I understood the majority of the video, and then the chicken comes on, and the music, and it's like, all right, so you have to, I'm sorry, you have to explain how it all connects, because it was just, it was like Jeopardy, the lamb that looks like it's the lamb chops lamb from Lamb Chops Play Along passes out on the
song
on the
that never ends.
Yeah,
and then here comes the chicken. You're like, oh, sorry guys, and then the chicken. I don't get the chicken. The chicken.
the little parrot at the end or whatever. Okay, so let's see. The sheep puppets, Judah and Assad, are two long-running characters that we had in a bunch of little puppet videos. We were trying to come up with things that are Instagram and TikTok friendly, like good little 10 to 20 second videos to catch people's attention and get across a big issue. And we did a bunch of those across the last few months of the campaign. And and then there was another character that kind of like, the CEO character in a suit, and he kind of like takes on various roles. Like he'll play my incumbent, or he plays like the wealthy businessman or generic, politician X. It's like the three of those were the common puppets we kept seeing in them. What's happening in the video is someone voting, and we're using the pictures that Ken used in his mailers. So it's that discounted picture of me, like what I looked like a few years ago. And which honestly, I mean, I unanimously got the nomination from the California Democratic Party to run in for this seat with a beard still down to my navel. I didn't cut it until February, and that was because it was more like my fiance was not a fan of it. It was like, well,
you needed to add the purple like Dimebag Darrell.
And honestly, it was time for a change anyway. I've changed my beard style repeatedly over the last 30 years or whatever. I haven't seen my chin in a long time, but I've changed the style quite a few times. And I just did it, right? But he deliberately took a scary looking picture. So we put those pictures and they're voting between them. And it's trying to get at the superficiality of elections, that someone can just look at an ad and two pictures and like, oh, well, I'll pick this guy and vote for him. And then chaos comes out of that because, if we think about the long-term messaging in my campaign, poverty has actually increased in this district. Pollution has increased. Traffic has increased. Our quality of life is going down steadily. And this guy's been in Congress for 28 years. Yeah. He's not done a damn thing to make our lives better. He's actively made them worse. And
his life's probably gotten much better, though.
He's now a multimillionaire, and he doesn't even have to live in the district anymore. He lives down on the coast in Orange County. So
how does that work?
Him, I guess, but whatever. In California, you don't actually have to live in district, which is weird, but whatever.
That is just wrong.
It is, yeah. Although just to be able to get past that, and so that the ballots always say like, Corona. He maintains a house in Corona in the northern part of the district, but he doesn't live there. He lives in Newport Beach. But whatever. But it's trying to get it like never judge a book by its cover. Don't pay attention to the BS media stuff. Think about what someone's actually going to do. That's the overall message for the campaign. At the end, that's kind of a personal nod. I'm a historian of the Middle East. My lead videographer from with his little company, Climate Change Couch Potato, that does all these videos. He's Palestinian, so we both enjoy Egyptian music. So it's like,
oh wow.
A dancing bird to a popular Egyptian song. It's just
cool.
it's a cute little personal nod that people can relate
They
to.
can
It.
dance along with.
Yeah, it's just being cute.
So
Well, it's
tell
really cool.
everybody
We
where
love
they
all the
can-
layers.
Tell everybody where they can find you, how they can run, or how they can run with you, how they can help you run for Congress here in 2 years.
No, seriously.
I love the word.
They will. I mean, again, come on board. So liamomera.org is my website. Super generic Irish name, but it's the .org. So liamomara.org. At the top, there's volunteer and donate links. And you can do text banking, phone banking, all kinds of stuff from anywhere to help out there. So the volunteer link is important. And obviously, again, small donations really add up. So people helping out there, that's a good way to do that. And I'm super active on social media. So I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all over the place there. So just search for Liam O'Mara and look for the hairy guy who looks like me
with the short beard.
Right.
With the short beard, we gotta make sure that everybody knows that.
Slightly shorter, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Well, you have our information for a show now as campaign starts ramping up. If you want to check back in, we'll be happy to have you on for a spot anytime coming up here in the next 2 years. Yeah,
honestly, I'm always happy to talk about different issues. So, like, you guys have one that you got on as an issue. We were going to talk about the whole fraud allegations and all that. And then you've got an interesting issue. I'm happy to jump in for some of those if you're interested in the future. So just
definitely.
But anyway,
awesome. Well,
thanks
cool.
much.
So thanks so much for us. And like I said, every link will be in the description of all the shows. So if you're on YouTube or Facebook or if you get our podcast, the links are all in the description to help support him. I even threw his Act Blue link in there too as well if you want to give a donation directly without having to go to the website. So
right on. Thanks much.
All right, cool. Thank you so much. Have a good day, sir. With that being said, we're gonna jump over quick to this segment. So this weekend segment was the MAGA Million March, and I looked it up because we had a friend of ours happen to have joined the show, right? Or not joined our show, but joined his own show, and he decided that he was going to go speak at the march. And anyway, so I wanted to look up to see if I could find some pictures, any of those other things, and that. And so when I did that, I all of a sudden seen these pancakes, and I couldn't figure it out. Who's tweeting this shit with pancakes, right? I don't understand. So I just thought it would be.
Can we just name this segment what it should have been called is K-pop Saves the World from Trump? God. Because this is the second time K-pop fans have trolled the hell out of Trump. And honestly, at first I thought it was just kind of hamsters on helium when that music was playing. And now I'm just like, you know what? Let them do whatever they do because they're clearly bringing out the right people.
Oh man, they are. I can't believe that Gen Z and K-pop dance videos and boys in makeup like just take over politics. I'm game.
Oh yeah,
I'm game. I'm totally game.
I voted for Joe Biden. I'm staying home and eating pancakes. I'm sorry, that was like my favorite.
Oh
yeah.
The blue raspberry pancake, which I didn't know who eats this, but I probably would not eat that. But I guess I have a quick story. Technically speaking, I did make blue pancakes with my daughters one time, and then the next week we made blue French toast. So I mean, I guess it's the thing. We didn't do it because of this. It was like I don't know, during quarantine when we were bored. We're like,
did you use food coloring or did you use blueberries?
No, we use food coloring. We're cheap.
Yeah, no, I whenever I make waffles, my daughters is like, do you want orange? Do you want blue? Do you want yellow? Or do you want red or pink? Whatever waffles. And they pick the color, and that's what we make them in. And they think it's the greatest thing ever. And they don't even think; they just shove them in their faces, and they actually eat their food.
And it worked. So I don't know. We don't need to go through a lot of these. You can look at them on your leisure. I just thought they were fun.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Great. Oh, it made me so happy. It did. The pancake.
Yeah, it was just. I mean, there you go. The Prince with the pancake one. That was pretty good too. Actually,
that was a great episode.
Purple cakes, purple cakes.
Anyway,
that song stuck in my head, and now it's gonna be stuck in yours too.
Fair enough. I don't know. I like I said, I just thought that it was
a good time.
a good
That's what
time.
it was a good time.
I did. So I don't know.
Mhm.
It is what it is, like I said. So we'll see. With that being said, I have a slight diatribe for you all tonight. So all yourself. But that's just kind of that's kind of the way it is. I opened last week up and then I kind of got passionate. And so I thought tonight I did a little bit of research and we'll have a blog coming out on all the shows, channels, plus a blog on the Trickle Up this week talking through this. So one of the big things, and I guess I could swear now because I feel more, I don't feel as uncomfortable. I never felt uncomfortable about swearing until now, but COVID and wearing a fucking mask, right? So this weekend, obviously what happened is Michigan put a new set of requirements in place. And this literally happened last night. So as of 6 p.m. last night, they decided that we here in Michigan are going to take a little bit of a step back, and that what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of some of our in-person meeting requirements. We're going to get rid of being able to work in the office if we don't have to. And we're going to start limiting activities that are allowed for the next 3 weeks. So technically, the restrictions don't go in place till the 18th, but they're going to go till December. So what this did is it got me thinking a little bit. I gave my whole diatribe last week about, why we need to be happy with Trump gone, what it means to me, what it means to others in America. But the big thing here is, what does COVID mean to everybody, right? We've talked about COVID on the show a lot. We've talked about all these different ideologies and why we understand the science behind it. But one of the big things that a lot of people don't talk about is the numbers. And when they do, everybody just thinks they're so big numbers they can't be real, right? So I felt compelled to have a conversation about COVID and wearing a mask and social distancing. So the first thing I did is I went through and I said, hey, I'm going to look at all the cases that I have going on worldwide, right? And if here we go. And so if we look at this CDC COVID tracker, right? And I put the links in the description if you want to follow along. We can see that the COVID cases have spiked in the US, right? The tracker allows us to check by each one of the different states. So you could go to state number 1, state number 2. And then what I was noticing is that some of the more liberal states saw these trends where it would go up and then down real quick, up and then down real quick. But after I kind of went through a lot of them, there wasn't enough evidence to really show that pattern fit only liberal states. Because, for example, in Mississippi, we saw a similar style pattern a little bit. And they're a pretty conservative state, in my opinion, right? So then I decided to look at the actual numbers. So when I looked at the total numbers for the cases, the United States clocks in at 11.18 million cases. The total world cases, and this is what's insane, right, is 54.8 million. We have 20% of the cases that have existed for COVID in the United States. Now, guess what the world population is and what our American population is. The world population is 7.7 billion, and America makes up 331 million. We're not at 33 yet. So 331 million people. So we have 4.3% of the total populace. And as you all know, I'm statistics, I'm a numbers guy, right? So then I decided, well, what if I look at the total deaths? Do we see a similar, trade that way? The total amount of worldwide deaths for coronavirus is 1.32 million in the United States, or in the world. And the United States holds roughly 247,000 of those. We make up 18.7% of deaths. So, again, let's re-examine that number. Our populace is 4.3% of the world, but we have 20.4% of the coronavirus cases and 18.7% of the deaths. We are literally losing right now. And I could say a couple of other things, but if we move on and say, okay, what if we test more people? Would it be higher? Well, then our deaths would be lower. If we tested more people, we could stop the virus faster. Therefore, by logic would dictate, if our death ratio came in, let's just say at half even of what the case ratio is, I could at least concede that point to conservatives or to Trump. I could do that, but I can't because we're not even 2% down. We're leading the world. So then I said, what's the next closest nation in coronavirus cases? And the next closest nation is India. They come in at 16% of total cases. And they have 1.39 billion people in their country. They make up 17.9% of the total world population. So, okay. So at least those two numbers correlate. Again, we go back to the U.S. If the U.S. was 20% of the world, therefore we had 20% of the cases, I would have less of an argument of whether we're doing things right or whether we're not. But then we go to the next statistic and we look at Brazil. Brazil holds the second place medal for coronavirus deaths. They come in at 12.5%. 12.5%. Their populace, though, only makes up 2.73% of the world population. So guess what? What's the correlation between Brazil and the United States? I'm pretty sure we can guess it's a president who doesn't give two shits about the coronavirus. So what does this mean? With all of the issues and all of the things going on, why do I feel like I need to wax poetic about this? Right? I say it's because we have all these people who are now complaining on Facebook about the lockdown in Michigan. And I get it. It's bad. I don't want to be locked down either. I just went out and spent a lot of money on food to be able to sit in my house and not go to the bloody ass store, right? And we can sit here and talk about this, but when we have all these events that just happened this weekend, especially the two in Michigan, where people are protesting, and this is what burns my bottom, is we have these people protesting without fucking masks on. Wear your fucking mask, people, at minimum, right? And Trump has done nothing to help this, and the people in Michigan just want to see us impeach a governor over a few fucking restrictions. Come on, folks. I get it. It's easier to sit in your house, and it's easy to complain. It's easy to call to action. It's easier to fund the lawyers. It's easier to say, let's get rid of Whitmore because I don't like what she has to say. But are you really serious? What purpose do you think this is going to do? What do you want to do then? I would ask the question then, how can we stem the rising tide of death and sickness? If the numbers, which I just demonstrated, and again, links in the description, I've just demonstrated the numbers show we obviously are not doing what it takes to control it in the United States. So instead of sitting here trying to impeach Whitmer because you don't like it, the numbers dictate this is correct. What do you want to do? Why don't you stop complaining about the fucking show that she is trying to impose on us? And why don't you get off your ass and talk about how we can help stem the tides before a vaccine hits? And folks, we've got a show coming up in the next 2 weeks, maybe 3, depending on the holiday, where we talk with somebody that works on vaccines about this. She's going to explain to us how long all this takes, what it does for the community, how many people probably won't bother to join and actually have a conversation or take the vaccine, right? Because I'm here to tell you, as of July, we as a United States are on track to have over 204,000 extra deaths than we normally have. And that total doesn't even include the normal increase that we have as every year. So every year we increase the amount of deaths we have by a small percentage. That 204,000 doesn't even touch that. So we have more deaths coming at us because of this virus. So I get it. I get what your points are. I get the point of having a conversation, about, all these populaces and what's it going to do, to the world. And, how is it going to hurt my economy and all of that type of a thing. I get it. It's scary. And we can talk a little bit about that in the future episodes. But the big thing I have to say for now, honestly, is either you're selfish and you don't care about other people's lives and you just don't want to grasp compassion or empathy, or you've bought into this fake news conspiracy theory that continues to allow people to use the hard critical thinking skills that seem to elude those of you who don't want to believe the numbers, and you're just accepting this inevitable destruction path that the virus is willing to take us on. you go. You all got good old Dolph Tanner for the night. That's my rant for the day. Now we always do a segment where we have a conversation about asking or answering conservative questions, right? So
Well, not always, but we try to sometimes.
yeah. We,
Ah,
I think we've almost always had it. Maybe last week. I think you failed last week. Did you fail last week,
Just bring it.
Keith? Is that what it was?
Don't drag me into your problems. Not in front of
you
Hannah.
Hosted last week.
We can't blame Keith for NAFTA. It's not his problem. It's not his fault.
Fair enough.
Or to whatever horrible alphabet soup the new one's called. Continue. Conservative questions.
We like to do this segment. I think it's a good segment. I don't know about you, but I think it's a good segment.
It's a good thing.
And I could have done the COVID one as a segment, and I could have, but the numbers are way too much for me to allow. I don't understand why COVID is this conversation piece anymore, and why they continue to push it into the political spectrum. I don't get it.
We politicize disease. It happens. America, bigger, better, awesome.
Yeah.
Continue.
So this week it is, why are Democrats so secure in Biden winning this election? So that was I got this question by, I don't know, literally probably like 15 people in the last week. And it's because they believe that Biden really hasn't secured the election. He hasn't secured the win.
Oh.
This and that. So why don't I just talk for a little while. I'll let the two of you go first.
Ruh-roh. Hannah, you usually have the most to say. You go first.
Yeah, for this one here, just like, if I understand the question correctly, is why are Democrats so comfortable saying we don't really need to make sure all the votes, whatever, we don't, you know what I mean? Like, they're just like, this is, we're comfortable. Biden won it. The news told us so. Most of the votes are done. We're not entirely 100% absolutely certified, but Biden won.
Yes, and that's what they're questioning. Yeah. I mean, essentially, the main example is, why do you feel that this is reliable just because Google pops it up, right? Why can't you wait till December 13th and 14th for it to certify? Why do you think that Mr. Biden is really the elect? For example, Obama got into office fair and square, but we didn't have any compromised voting or any allegations ever under Obama, but now we do, and you guys just want to certify this?
Yeah, so basically, the idea is, like, when we heard about the Trump election, there was a whole bunch of outcry from the Republican Party that said, no, we actually think that there's a problem here. We were worried about stuff. But when the Democrats were contesting the Trump election, they weren't contesting the votes themselves. At no point anywhere in any of the Democratic outcry for the last election in 2016 that there was something wrong that happened. That they were in no point were they saying that any of the votes were changed, any of the tabulations affected, nothing was hacked. There were attempts by various governments to get into our systems and potentially have some kind of control. But in all reality, even the Republican, even all of the different task forces that Trump had set up and McConnell had set up and the Republicans had gone through with Governor Kemp and all these folks that said that there was all kinds of stuff, and they eventually disbanded. They didn't announce it. They didn't say, we didn't find anything. Like, they just quietly said, we didn't find anything. And then that was it. That's as far as they went. And so in the end, even the last election in 2016, which was very, very problematic for a variety of reasons, the reasons Democrats were so uncomfortable with certifying and basically accepting everything is that foreign money, foreign influence, foreign connections. There's a reason why 6 people in the Trump administration went to prison. Like, this isn't a joke. There were people that were doing things that were illegal. And that's the reason why there was a question about the Trump legitimacy in his actual in his election. At no point were the Democrats really seriously contesting any of the vote tabulation. And it's the same here, is that the Democrats essentially have faith in the vote tabulation, in the system. It is reliable. As we talked about earlier with Liam, is that our system is so decentralized in this country that it's an unhackable system, because you can drive 30 miles and be in a new town that has nothing but paper ballots and like like Fred Flintstone. There's no way the internet's getting anywhere near these folks, and they're not. How do you hack that? How do you copy and paste all of their mail-in ballots? Like, it's almost impossible to do that. And so Democrats themselves are saying the system itself, there's nothing wrong with it. We had a problem in 2016 with foreign influence, foreign money, and foreign I guess potentially money, but mostly just foreign influence with people like Flynn, who were essentially saying, listen, don't worry about any of the sanctions that we just turned on, because Trump's going to be president soon, and he's probably just going to be like, nah, not that big of a deal. Like those kinds of backroom deals, that was the stuff that Democrats had a problem with. So like, you're apples to oranges here. Like, we were comparing and complaining in the Democratic Party about things that were obviously illegal as far as American elections are concerned. Those things, as far as I have seen, and I have not heard a lot of reports, those things didn't happen this time. We built up an insulated firewall to kind of keep that stuff from happening. There were attempts in our social media to make changes, but it wasn't quite so blatant as far as the campaigning and stuff is concerned. And so the Biden campaign obviously doesn't have strange, weird connections with his advisors to Russia and to China and to whatever. There was the Hunter stuff, and we kept asking Tucker Carlson to produce the paperwork, and he said it got lost in UPS. Because it's Tucker Carlson. And I mean, the best he can do is deliver a burnt meatloaf. So in the end, the Democrats are more comfortable because the system itself is reliable, and all of the extrapolating situations from the Trump presidency and the last time they ran, those aren't really in effect this time. So we don't have those problems. So we're comfortable with this election.
Buddy?
I mean, I am kind of coming at this one with a little bit of an ignorance of American politics. I didn't actually realize that it still wasn't official. It just looks that way.
Yeah, they don't have to submit the vote counts until the end of November, and some places even in the early December. Like the final, we counted everything.
Interesting. Yeah, so yeah. I maybe Canada were just a lot more privileged, and I find it kind of funny. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that there's a problem with our voting in that we do paper ballots, which are manually counted. I can tell you this because I was one of the people who counted ballots in 2008.
Did you forge some? You put some fake ones in there?
No.
Sure?
I although if I had, I don't know what the statute of limitations is on that, so I'm gonna ignore that question.
3 years for credit card fraud.
No, back then I was voting conservative. So if I had committed voter fraud, guess who would have benefit from it? So irony, but no, I didn't. I took it very serious because I didn't just get the basic polling job. I was actually the returning officer. So I was 19 years old, and I had to return an entire box full of ballots to Elections Canada, which is our third-party entity that handles all of our elections. But the ballots are manually counted, and anybody who follows me follows Buddy Lumberjack on Twitter can see that I already commented on that one while Tanner was having his COVID rant, because I was taking a break to go have my own rant, except it was text and not quite all caps, but I felt like it. So we typically know by the next morning. I mean, granted, I live in the second last time zone of my country, so usually by the time I go to bed, I've got a pretty good idea about who won before it's officially announced. But sometimes things change. But by the next morning, it's announced, and we don't have a couple of months to wait. We have maybe a couple of weeks before the transition of power occurs, and all the seats are properly divvied up. I'm not going to Google that. I'm not going to waste more time doing that.
Look into the American history. It used to take until March.
How?
Yeah.
Why?
They would vote in November or right at the new year, and it took until the spring. It was bad. Like lame duck was just crazy. So look into the American history there, dude. It's nasty. I didn't know about this recently.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, we're gonna have to have him come back and talk history, not just politics, because that would be cool. I'm I'm glad we had him. He was a good interview for us. Anyways, but I mean, so maybe it's just my privilege talking, but shouldn't your election kind of be known within a couple of days, given like you guys have democracy coming out the ass? Is just kind of my question.
We usually do,
and
have a really good idea, like an almost insurmountable idea.
And
this year with the
Trump
increase,
supporters insufferably, we won, like within hours, like it hadn't even been called.
Well, that was part of the strategy. We talked about it. It's like they all voted in person, so those votes are tabulated immediately.
No, I was meaning when I was meaning in 2016. You know, the year we'd like to forget, the year we were all drunk, and now 2020 is the hangover.
Good Lord! In 2016, when Trump came out and was just like, we won,
yeah.
It was his acceptance speech. His acceptance speech was panicked. It was panicked.
But anyways, yeah. So, you know, it's kind of funny to see that question get asked from the conservative side, because they do the exact same thing. You know, so it's well, why do you? You know, I hate to do the whataboutism thing, but what about you? Like, that's exactly what you do. So why is it a problem? I mean, it looks pretty cut and dry that, I mean, Biden won. I mean, half your country is still got a lot of questions I'd like answered, and I'd like them not answered in crayon, because as far as I'm concerned, voting for Trump is the equivalent of drawing in crayon, because that's the ultimate vote against yourself. Not even. But I was just,
Danny's not here, Mrs. Torrance.
So why so secure? Because why not be secure? I mean, every time Trump keeps getting blocked in terms of his lawsuits, he's getting laughed at because he's saying no, we won. It's all the legitimate votes, and nobody has been able to provide any tangible evidence of potential voter fraud.
Lawyers, the firms that were representing him, were trying to bring things that were brought in on Post-it notes, and they've been just hacked. And so a bunch of them have just been quitting.
Even Giuliani, his little speech at the Four Seasons Lawnscape Center, where the Fox News, wasn't it Fox News who came to him and were like, so what do you say about them calling Biden as a winner, blah blah blah, and he goes, well, who's saying that? All the news outlets, all the news outlets. Oh, and it's just like, how childish can you get, right? But there's no reason not to. There's no proof that Biden didn't win. So, kind of confident in that, my anxiety really doesn't feel too bad. It's actually letting me feel confident in something for once. Is that a good enough answer?
Yeah, because on my side, you know, the real biggest thing is you know, the accusation of an understanding, why do we, you know, what are we going to do with the votes? And we're going to get into election fraud in just a second here. But, you know, essentially, we don't just take people's words for it. That's not how it works. You know, you vet this. You have to go through a judicial practice. They do allow some hearsay type stuff in courtrooms. But, I mean, look at Brett Kavanaugh. He still got in. He wasn't found wrong of any sexual allegations, even though there was a lot of evidence that direction. But we still didn't find it that way. So, you know, like, you could sit there and say, yeah, there's some voter fraud, and there probably is some voter fraud. In fairness, it happens. It just doesn't happen to an extent that it's going to swing an election, right? And you know,
we're talking maybe tens of votes.
Yeah.
Maybe into the hundreds for the whole country, where people try to vote twice or little tiny things, but we're talking in the tens of thousands of votes to change states.
And the other thing is that you're getting your sources from not major news outlets, and I'm actually good with that, except for the fact of what we talked about at the beginning with the whole Reagan concept of you deregulating the media. There's nothing. So if they don't like Fox News, boom, I'm done. But I can tell you, Fox News is ultra biased. And they're even calling it for Biden. And when they have to repeatedly say, we really don't think that, and they do it to the point where Trump notices and has to tweet about how the morning show is shit.
And Kushner called Murdoch. Kushner called Rupert Murdoch directly. I mean, he actually called him, like, can you rescind Arizona's call?
Yeah, which is just crazy, right? In Arizona, they let you vote up to 7 days after the election. I have a link. We can look at it in a minute if you want. And the link tells all the absentee votings, all the mail-in policy votings, all of this shit. And that's what's infuriating, is that it's like, do your research. Don't listen to a puppet head on a stand telling you it's wrong. Actually go do your research. And this is where I get pissed off at these alternate news sources. And it's funny, we had a guy in the comments today calling Liam out. And if you go on Twitter, he's doing the same thing. And the idea behind it is, that's good. We should be challenging these things. They can still have different ideas on whether Liam believes that Republicans didn't vote down party or not. We 100% can have that argument. But the difference is that when you have to start quoting the stone cold truth, which we're going to get to in just 20 seconds, you're just losing credibility. Biden won, and we've done this the exact same way for every other president since I've been alive. So I have no reason to doubt it any more than anything else. The other second reason is because of the fact that the rhetoric came ahead of the election. If Trump hadn't said anything and just let all this ride and then started making these claims, we would be in a different position, in my opinion, right?
He was conditioning the polls.
Yes, you're conditioning everything. And that's the problem I have. When you force voter suppression, you don't allow for the people to count early, you don't do any of these things to say we can have this, because you know what society dictates and what the trends dictate, because you want to suppress it. When you already predict it happening, and then it happened, and then you claim it happens, it's like you're not actually predicting it. You're creating a false atmosphere. And I can't remember the psychology word, honestly. There's a word, there's a word that goes to this. I can't remember this now, but there's a word that goes, I'll look this up in a minute. There's a word that goes with this that means exactly what I'm saying. You're being conditioned to follow the answer all the way down the bunny trail. And that's illogical.
So John's got a nice point there. Time he's just gonna stop. We're making sense. So I guess he's gonna go listen to Tucker try to find his UPS package.
Oh, that's a good one.
How convenient.
So now I wanted to talk about voter fraud, and I'll be honest with you, I originally had planned like an hour-long segment, but I don't feel like a week into this, I don't feel as upset by some of this stuff. So
we've changed on a few of these things already.
Yeah,
also.
And we'll go through this, and I think it's very important to have some of these conversations. But we're going to start with the most shared website that has been given to me to prove there's
is this Roger Stone?
I don't know. Self-fulfilling prophecy. There you go. Thank you, Corey. I don't know if that's a technical term, but I'm going to accept it right there. Thank you. I could not figure out what the hell it was. Oh, I love that guy.
So yeah,
I love you, Corey. I used to play in a band with him. So.
Oh, I see.
We could play the music if you want. Maybe that's an after-hour show.
We have multiple times. We have.
Anyway, let's move on. So this is the news site that that people are sharing with me. And again, I'm not going to completely say there's not been any fraud. I will never say that. And I do believe there is some sort of voter fraud. And I do believe that personally, I do believe that some of the people inside the arena probably made it a lot harder than it needed to be. But on the opposite side of things, they know what happens with all of these MAGA people, and they know what happens with the polarization. So Trump's polarized this whole thing.
This is Roger Stone's blog.
Well, you're right. I'm not saying we should take
He was
credibility.
pardoned by the president. Ew.
I know. But Hannah, we have to be a little bit serious though, and say a little bit serious, and we have to understand that people.
Somebody thinks this is real, yeah.
Well, even not that bad, but people can feel a little bit upset, right, about the fact that people are trying to push people out of the polling areas. I don't disagree, right? That's a weird thing. Like, why do we have an insurgence of people wanting to watch ballots? I know why they're pushing them out, but it does feel a little bit weird, especially on the surface, to say, holy shit, all these people are being denied. Now, we could debate, how we could debate how they're being denied in a couple of different ways. On this website, I guess I should probably move this back to my screen so I can see it. Because I can't see this gibberish on here. But so this, they're claiming this right here is odd. And I would say, yeah, that is kind of odd. Oh, except for the fact that Trump said, do not vote mail-in. I'm going to suppress mail-in votes. And anything that comes in after the cutoff time of 8 p.m. is fake news and are no longer valid votes.
Well, it's a direct definition of hypocrisy when Trump says, "I want to stop all the voting in states that I am currently losing in, and we should keep voting in states that I am currently winning in, or we should stop." You know what I mean? Like there was all kinds of different things that he was like doing different things with different states. So it wasn't like stop all the counting everywhere. It was stop in places like Pennsylvania, stop in places like Michigan, where at the time all of the mail-in ballots hadn't been counted. So it was trending red. I think you guys remember all the pink Florida, pink all the pink
Yes.
Pennsylvania, pink Wisconsin, pink Michigan. Like he wanted to stop that. And then so like all of that reporting for mail-in ballots, all the reporting for all of this counting is something that's going to come in large chunks because they're going to count all of this and then report the finding. They're going to report all of their counts, but it's not going to be something that you can be able to monitor in where they basically do the what is it when they talk about who they voted for on the way out.
Yeah. And if you look at this video, so this video on here is claiming that this Chrysler van shows up, all these new votes come in. Who do you think they're for? We were ready to go home. Well, I'm pretty sure it was not light in Michigan at 8 p.m. I'm just going to be frank and tell you it's not. I live in Michigan. Your video is inaccurate, or you're recording this after the fact. So, I'm moving on.
And either way, like it's the fraudulence. Like you can't just like come in and say like I'm gonna vote in Michigan. Like you have to have a valid ID, you have to have a valid address. Like who are you? Oh, yeah. You are you? Great, go ahead and vote for your ballot.
Well, they're claiming these are ballots that came in a Chrysler minivan, and it's supposed to be when they're ready to go home.
Yeah.
And I'm
one of the
nobody's going home at 8 p.m. I mean, come on. Like that's not. I've been to the polls at the last minute. That's not how these things work. They're not at the door going, "Oh, you got 1 minute. Come on, get in here. We got everything locked down. We're ready to go." No, it's a government fucking thing. The government takes forever to do a damn thing. They ain't going home at 8 p.m.
So their argument is that a van full of ballots just showed up out of nowhere.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's really easy to check against the voter records.
One of the things that I was hearing about in a discussion on another podcast was about like you have the poll watchers because now there's been all of these Republican poll watchers who will show up because they want to make sure there's no voter fraud. Can't have any voter fraud, and a lot of them were of course being asked to step back by other staff, the staff actually working the election. And the reason why they kept getting asked back is because they were actually hindering the process. They were creating more problems because they were going, well, why are you doing that? Well, why are you doing that? Because they're sitting there and they're putting a negative assumption on the as to everything that's going on because they don't know what's going on. They've never been there before. They've never been on that side of things. So they're sitting there and saying, well, if I don't like the way this looks, I'm going to assume it's bad, and I want to understand exactly or I want you to understand that I think it's bad and you shouldn't be doing that, blah, blah, blah. All the while they're sitting there actually hindering the vote count and interfering with the vote count because they don't know what they're doing, because they're just there because they're chasing some boogeyman that has been proved time and time again to not really exist. Corey, there may have been other factors, but one of the discussions that I had been hearing is that was part of the reason. Yes, COVID would be reason to give space to the poll to the people working the polls, but and so it's just there's a great big circle of other issues going on here that it's just getting really frustrating because there's all these cries of voter fraud, and where's the proof? Like we want proof. Like the three of us sitting here, if we found out that there was voter fraud, regardless of who it benefit, we would all be like, yeah, let's chase this down, figure out what happened, who's involved, and what can be done to stop this in the future, regardless of whether it benefit us or not. But you're not seeing that on the other side. And all you're seeing on the other side is they're just hopping in there. They're just barging in there, screaming at the top of their lungs, voter fraud, voter fraud, voter fraud. Okay, prove it.
Yeah. And here this person says that mail-in ballots don't even have to be signed. That's what they claim. That's no, don't do that. Sorry. Wrong hit of a Mac button. But they claim that you you don't have they don't have to be signed. Well, that's not true. That's not what they said. That's just what you're claiming. Here's another person who, in fairness, this guy's Facebook page doesn't show up. So either he doesn't exist under that name, or he doesn't have a Facebook somehow, or he's deleted it. And here he's claiming there's corruption. And I want to play this one for you.
My name is Brian McCaffrey. I'm a registered Democrat in the city of Philadelphia. Today, I'm at the Philadelphia Convention Center, and I am overseeing the ballot counters. I will let you know the corruption that is going on here. They will not allow us within 30 to 100 feet to supervise the ballots being counted. This is a coup against the President of the United States of America, and I want to call out the Mayor of Philadelphia, James Kenney, the Attorney General, Josh Shapiro, who tweeted that there's no way Donald Trump can win President of the United States of America, and also the District Attorney of Philadelphia, Larry Krasner. I can't believe what I'm seeing right before my eyes. This has nothing to do with Joe Biden or Donald Trump. This has to do with our democracy, and I will tell you, there is corruption at the highest level in the city of Philadelphia.
All right, so
my name is Brian.
Before we go too far, you can tell he's reading, right? This is not me.
Yeah, you can see his eyes.
This is him reading, and the audio is different. They have two sets of audio in there. So let's be conspiracy theorists. Let's put our conspiracy hats on for a second, folks. I'm just saying, like, this is illogical to me, right? Because my audio sounds good and then sounds bad and then sounds good again. It looks like at the end that technically his lips aren't syncing up with the audio, and for some reason he's got to read what he's claiming is happening. Because if it were me and I was gonna go live, I sure as fuck wouldn't have wrote it out. Like, let me get my writing device out. All right, I'm gonna put it in my notes on my iPhone. Right, hit record the broadcast. Okay, yep. Flip back over quick. Okay, I'm gonna read it. Come on.
We know you don't pre-plan your write-outs.
Fuck you. Oh, fuck you, Hannah. But yeah, so that's just crazy. This one
for me. Hold on. Just go back to that dude.
All right.
So basically, the whole thing about that guy, you are not allowed anywhere near any of the shit if you are not a party-sanctioned observer. That's the thing. This is Bill Bob, Joe, Jim Bob. Who gives a who you are? If you are not a sanctioned observer who is supposed to be there watching, then you are not allowed in that area. You are not allowed anywhere near there. One of the things that they called for in the Republican marketing was that everyone should go in and just be an observer and go in and watch. You can't. You're not allowed legally. You are not allowed to be anywhere near, because we're trying to prevent contamination of the ballots. Like, whoever random person comes in with a set of, I don't know, shooting earmuffs on, like, you can't just go in and go wherever you want. And so, like, you have to be a person that's sanctioned by your party, by the Democratic Party or the Republican Party or the Libertarian Party, whatever, to be an observer of the election. It's been so frustrating to see all these people going in thinking they can just go in and they can watch people count. No, you can't. You have to pay attention to the system. This is another effect of the marketing and people that are ignorant of the system. We talked about earlier with Liam, when he basically was saying, like, people that don't know what's supposed to going on, they don't understand, and they're pushing information to get people to go out and do stuff. Well, those people themselves don't know what's supposed to go on either. And so, like, it's a bunch of ignorance that's happening. People thinking they can go in and just do whatever they want. And there's a whole series of things you're supposed to be able to do. And I've seen videos of people saying they weren't allowed to go in and count stuff. Well, you're not allowed, because you're not part of the Democratic or Republican Party, and you haven't been notified to the entire voting populace, or the people that are the county board of elections, that you're supposed to be there. Like, if they don't have a record of you, you can get the hell out. And that's probably what happened to this guy.
Yeah. I mean, and here's a video. I don't even know what this is. Oh, this is the lady Ransom.
These are mail-in ballots.
Are there a ton in there?
Yeah.
All right. Are you collecting from a lot of places?
Yeah. So I'm going to stop here. We're not going to even watch this because it's Wednesday, the day after the election, and they're collecting ballots. I'm pretty sure
you're allowed to do that.
100% sure, but I'm pretty sure they could do that. I don't know. Hold on. Let me see here. Do I have a link? I don't know, Hannah. Do you think I have a link?
So when you're allowed to collect the ballots?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I put my Dropbox For my mail-in ballot, I did a drop box instead of a mail-in. So I filled it out and I did a drop box right at my county board of elections. You know what happened? They picked it up at the end of the day. They took it inside and they did the initial scans for Ohio. We talked about this for in Michigan. It's allowed to start processing. Ohio's allowed to start processing immediately as soon as they're allowed to send out their mail-in ballots. They're allowed to start processing. They can't tabulate anything. So I put my ballot into the box. Within a day or so, it had been scanned and it had been tabulated to the point where it was in the system. And so I could go on and see that my ballot was valid, it was verified, and it was counted. And I didn't have to worry at all about my ballot not being scanned and not being counted.
Yeah.
So
now, here's the thing. So what they're claiming is right here, because they have a receipt deadline of election day by 7 p.m. So if they were held over, but here's the problem. If they were prevented, and this is where it gets tricky here, if they were prevented from collecting them, if there wasn't enough staff to collect them, what do you do? Do they just also not count because the state
so
can't
do
get
they
them
just
together?
stay in the box and they didn't?
Yeah.
They couldn't pick them up fast enough. Yeah.
If that is truly the day after, then you tell me, what do you do then? So here we have an unprecedented case, right? Where Trump's going to claim, well, these are technically illegal because they weren't here with a ballot receipt by that deadline. But if they were put in that box before 7 p.m., right?
Yeah.
Before the night before, technically they are in receipt before the deadline. That doesn't mean they have to be counted by the deadline because they have 14
Till
days.
the end of the month, yeah.
Yeah, to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's all kinds of things. This is all part of the. So if in one area there may be a restriction, so like if you're in some city in X part of flyover country America, and there's a restriction that says that they can't do this here, and they see a video of somebody on the eastern seaboard or somebody in the Pacific Northwest, and they see this thing that's not allowed in their rinky-dink town happening on the coast, and they're like, that's not allowed. This is definitely obviously evidence of some kind of a coup. Yeah, I mean, we're looking at difficulties, but there's no consistency in our system. But also, that's one of the basically embedded benefits of our system is that it's so decentralized that you cannot essentially hack all of it. So let's say in a small section of small town, one drop box or a couple of spaces or whatever, some nefarious actions happened. Unfortunately, some people will lose their suffrage and they won't be able to vote. That is a terrible, terrible thing that someone could ruin it. Let's say there were people that were dumping gasoline into drop boxes and they started the whole drop box on fire, burned everything inside. There are cases where people do horrible things like that to remove people's ability to vote. But in all reality, if you look at the consistent statistical analysis for the entire country, we do not see any kind of irregularities that we haven't pre-planned for this into the system. Like, it's not a problem.
So one of the main things in Michigan is people claim they were sharing a Secretary of State image where the voters were less than the registered vote, or the voters were more than the registered voters. But
more people voted than was registered. Yeah.
So here's all the registered voters. So you can add them all up, 8 million according to this site, right?
Yep.
So there's that. There's also another Secretary of State list, and again, I'll be honest, I don't know which one I would use. I just know that these exist. But here's another one where you can look at the total by county, right? Both of them come in almost identical to the 8 million voters. So the people who are claiming this, and then we go, oh, well, hold on. Well, how many people were registered in 2016? 2016, come on, there we go. And this actually gives you how many people are registered all the way through, right? Well, there you go, 7.7. So we had more registered voters 4 years later than we did before.
And some of those people registered the day they voted, which is something that's allowed in Michigan, and it's allowed in a lot of other states. And so you see these influence, especially in this most recent election, like there's a lot of people that came out. Liam said he had way more Republicans than expected come out because of the Trump motivation. So we saw a larger than average number. We saw tons of voter registrations that happened the day of voting, which is an awesome thing. I mean, we should all be happy that more people are being involved in the political system. There's a discrepancy there, saying more people voted than were registered. Yeah, well, there's a whole bunch of registrations, and then also you don't actually see more people voting than what's registered, because that would be 100% turnout, and I would love for someone to show me a county that had 100% turnout.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, I had the wrong article.
Well, images
here.
of the
And so essentially there was images going around, and I don't know if they're going to show it. So yeah, there's people right there claiming that there was more registered people than what were being shown on the site, and it looks like Trump won. And so here's the deal: if you actually look at it, and they have the memes down here. That's even better.
Yeah.
So they have him projected, and they explain in here why it was fake, right? So the Secretary of State's office said it is expected that its own reporting would be behind, and advised the public and the media ahead of time to check county election websites for more information. So yeah, they're behind. It's a state, for Christ's sake. I mean, like, we all know the state can't get their shit together.
Governments, we've talked about this many times. Governments that are slow moving and cumbersome are actually very good. So think about governments in history and in human history that were very efficient, very fast. They could change policy. They could make things happen really quickly. What kind of governments were those? Those were usually governments that didn't have any kind of opposition voice. They were very authoritarian. They're very totalitarian. They could make whole groups of people disappear overnight. They could change entire elections overnight. So, like, the fact that the government and the state governments and everybody are really moving kind of slow and they're not as efficient as they could be, it's actually kind of a good thing. We talked about this many times also. It's just like all the election.
And that's where I fail at, because in my job and what I like to do, I want to run 200 miles per hour. How do I implement more shit? How do I do the jerking off motion like Trump does every time I talk? You know, that type of thing. But, you know, like, you could put that up there. And then,
I was going to say, that's a good question.
Yep, we'll address that next. You know, so, you know, but that's the idea, though, is my life, I want to move 100 miles an hour. My boss always tells me in manufacturing and warehousing, you got to slow down, Chris, because you make too many changes fast enough. You could upset an apple cart and lose a client a lot of money, right? So the logic works with government there too. You know, so when we talk about, you know, those type of things, we have to accept that the government will work slower. It's not going to work for the progressives the same way we want it to, and we probably need different type of change. But we have to allow for the process to work. So now we had a comment that came in that says, why do you think there's such a huge voter turnout? I think there's 3 reasons, personal. Reason number 1 is, why are you laughing at me? I got 3 reasons.
Okay. Orange.
All right, fine. Reason 1, orange. I don't 100% agree with that, but I do agree that there was a large push to say, hey, this individual, I was saving that for last. But there's an issue, and we've had this conversation on the show before, but the big thing is we have an individual who is violating every norm possible for a presidency. He's claiming fraud before it happens. He's claiming he will not concede, and he still hasn't. By the way, when you don't concede, you don't let the president-elect get a part of some of the decisions and part of the security briefings. So you're fucking that shit up and then going golfing on the weekend. Suck it. But, you know, so part of it is because we have an unprecedented, and people want to go back to at least a minimal amount of normalcy. And there's another question that came in the chat that we'll address at the end about how half the country doesn't believe that Biden's legitimate president, and what does that mean for society? We'll come to that towards the end of the segment. But to address the huge voter turnout, 1, yes, Trump. 2, and I think it's on both sides, personally. Trump is on both sides.
Yeah.
2, I think we had a huge push. And minimum in Michigan, I know for a fact because I worked with those organizations about getting mail-in votes out, getting absentee ballots out, and not mailing them, but dropping them off at your local sink. Not that people would do that. And again, you know, for example, I did mine within 1 week of getting it. My wife took a month, you know, which is fine. That's her, you know, she was busy. That's what she did. My wife did that for elderly people at her facility. She was that caretaker that had to go help them fill ballots out and turn them in. And I could tell you for a fact, and if I don't know if anybody from my old work from KSS ever actually watched this. Fuck you, Janae. You're a piece of shit. I'm going to tell you right now, you're a piece of shit for fucking saying that Democrats are going into old people facilities and filling out ballots for them
Ballot
in
harvesting.
Biden's name. Fuck you. You are the problem and a horrible stain on society. And I say that because my wife works in that facility, in that healthcare role. She has to do this. Her name's on that. She can get sued for that. She can get all sorts of crazy shit going on for that. My wife is one of the most ethical people in the world. She literally told me, she's like, I would never ever do that. And guess who we caught? We caught somebody. There's a guy that came in that wanted to fill his mother's vote out for her. Flat out. You know, like, and like, you have to let him, like, if it's whatever the law says you have to do. But, you know, he never comes in and sees her except for at election time. Oh, there you go. You know, and when he drives away with the Trump stickers on his car and all this other shit, you just know. But those people are not the ones defrauding it because they're going to lose their medical licenses. Nobody is going to lose their livelihood. So, number two, the reason we had higher voter turnout is because we wanted to see people that were not able to vote or wanting to vote in the election to give them a chance. The third reason is because people are sick and tired of all the damn mail they get and all the damn phone calls they get and all the ads they see. So they're going to go out, they're going to put their vote in. They're going to say, maybe if I'm part of democracy, we can change that. There's a lot of people that wanted to go against Trump, right? That wanted to vote against him but didn't vote for Biden. I know people personally who voted for Joe Jurgensen. I do. And that's fine. I don't agree with it, but that's fine. I get it. At least you didn't vote for Trump. How about that? At least the Orange Monster didn't get your vote. So there was a lot of people that want to make, that's my third point, a lot of people want to make that third party, that extra vote count more. And
that happened in the last election with Gary Johnson. They're like, we had 5%. The Libertarian Party is now valid. And
it should be. And I'm sorry.
I know, but they just didn't, like, there was nothing. It was a blip on the radar this year.
Yeah.
So.
I think she had a better turnout than the Green Party did, but I'm telling you though, is that's why, and again, I don't want to get into ranked choice voting or any of this other shit right now. We're gonna go down a rabbit hole, and it's already 1:40, and I don't want to go too far because we have an after show with the Patreons that we do every week. So but anyway, the big thing is that understanding in my opinion, those are the main three. So the next thing that we have is why mail-in ballots were counted so late. Right? That's a question that comes in all the time. And yes, it's a CNN article, whatever. They're not going to lie about certain things, though. So they're explaining why the Republican-controlled legislatures refuse to change state laws to allow for mail-in ballots to be processed before 7 a.m. That's a fact. So when you talk about these mail-in ballots, these absentee ballots coming in late, not being counted towards the end, they are literally the last thing that these people are going to do.
Yep. Yeah, it's the absurdity of Michigan that they can't do anything until Election Day. That's insane.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's, that was one of the big issues that we saw, coming in, blah, 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 and all of that different, thing. Now, I have another article real quick that I wanted to kind of go over too. And again, we're really skimming on that. But here is an independent election observation council that this is an out of country, assembly.
Oh, is it the BBC group?
I think so. Yes.
So there were a bunch of different. So like one of the big things that we saw internationally is there were a whole bunch of countries that had people in the U.S. watching our elections, basically to confirm to their governments that our election systems was valid. So it's like an even more complex layer onto validity for this election is that the other countries were inside our country watching our elections.
Yeah. And I'm gonna say, like, they don't. I mean, I didn't see Keith come. I mean, it would have been nice if Keith had come. We could have partied. You could have done
Keith
your job remotely
did.
From my house. I got
could
an extra
have.
bed.
I actually could have. I can work remotely.
But so here's an independent council that's certifying this, right? That's outside of American politics. This doesn't happen normally. We don't get these people coming to America normally. But because
every election, there are other countries and that are just keeping an eye on it. This one was particularly worrisome. But there, every election, every major election, the U.S. goes into other countries and watches their election, and they come into our countries and watch our elections. Like it's kind of like an international policy thing where we all kind of watch out for each other in a modernized and industrialized world. And the United States has been increasingly more erratic, and so the world has more invested in that. I mean, if you just look at it, their markets and everything, like it swings violently when our president makes a weird toilet tweet.
So here is the last article, and this is a cautionary tale for when narcissism fails.
Oh boy,
that's awesome. That's a great tale.
Yeah, and I'll leave you with this before we jump into quick saves.
Mm-hmm.
As with many personality disorders, those who are extremely flawed of character, but especially the narcissists, when they face public disgrace, when they are outed as criminals or for their misbehavior, or when they fail in a very public way, that is when they become metastable, placing us as family, friends, co-workers, corporations, the public, or a nation in great danger. When things begin to sour for a narcissist, here's what we can expect. They will claim, or they will falsely claim, that everything is fine and that there is nothing wrong. They will try to misdirect us or claim there is nothing to the allegations or circumstances. If the evidence is presented, they will seek to have it invalidated or claim that it is fake or a product of vague conspiracies, but most certainly not true. Any evidence presented and those that present it will be attacked aggressively and vindictively. The better the evidence, the more aggressive the attack.
It's coming from Psychology Today, by the way. Also,
Yeah.
like a real scientific periodical. This is legit.
Yeah. Foolproof evidence will be portrayed as false and the results of pettiness, jealousies, bad actors, malice individuals, negativity haters, enemies, losers, conspirators, opposition, gain seekers, the faithless, or as we are now seeing, fake news.
It's like
yeah.
It is honestly, it's like when you look at North Korea and you say, did they read 1984 and just decide to build a society based on that book? Like when you read this, you're like, did Donald Trump read this and think, man, those are a bunch of really great points. We should use all of those. I mean, it's point by point. It doesn't even miss at all.
He's a handbook on narcissism at this point.
With that being said, let's jump into our quick saves quickly and then get out of here so everybody can go to bed for the night.
Yay!
Yay. That's all you got to say? You don't get to go to bed, buddy. You got another half hour. So we'll go with Buddy's
Eventually.
first and his
my quick save.
healing.
Okay, so the one that I chose is another social media account because I'm social media is kind of something that's never going to go away, I don't think. And I think that something that we could all benefit from is using social media better. I mean, there's something to be said for using it as a way of just kind of reminding yourself of good things in the world, r/iBleach, where you go and you see images that just remind you that there are good things in the world other than the year 2020. This, I mean, it's more informative. It's called Decolonize Myself, and essentially the main premise of the account is to shed light on issues facing First Nations people. As I'm pretty sure I've made it clear in previous episodes, this is a big issue for me. This is becoming a larger issue for me. This is when I found out how little I knew about issues facing First Nations people, about the ongoing cultural racism that they face, and basically how little was talked about in my education. And I used to think I had a pretty decent education. It really, really upset me, and I'm working to correct that, because I think that's my responsibility. And this account, they do put forward a lot of content about it. They talk a lot about the Micmac First Nations people in Nova Scotia. which is another issue that I've got to bring up here, and should go on to the next show. And it highlights a lot of the racism that you might see in Canada, because while we may not necessarily have we have issues with racism, not just focusing on one group. In the States, of course, it's predominantly the Black community that's been suffered. All of them have, but the Black community seems to be the largest one. Am I correct in saying that?
It's systemic, I would say. Like we've seen the Latin American community.
Sorry, more prominent, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in Canada, we see a lot of that with our First Nations, and so it is something that our culture really tries to deny and tries to hide from us, and because they don't want to make us uncomfortable. But this is a great way of kind of familiarizing yourself. You get to learn history. They keep up on current events. They bring up, as I said, history, and they do every once in a while bring up kind of some fun little snippets, or teach a little bit about culture and whatnot. And I thought that anybody who's interested in that subject and wants to learn more, I think that as far as social media goes, this is a great place to start anyways.
Fair enough. Anna?
So my post comes from the Friendly Atheist and Pathos. It's basically John Hagee being gross, because he is gross. Essentially, it's got COVID things. And pray the COVID away, and it's not a big deal. And it's
I have this announcement that I need to give you concerning Pastor Hagee. Pastor Hagee has been diligent to monitor his health during this entire COVID pandemic. But this past week, he was informed by his personal physician that he did test positive for COVID.
Yeah. So we basically have a guy who's got tons of money. I mean, he is a mega church pastor. He's got lots and lots and lots and lots of the American dollar bills, and he's going to take that and he's going to go into a hospital and he's going to basically benefit from evolutionary science and physics and all of those things. And he isn't going to go pray his COVID away. He's going to go to the doctor and he's going to get real science. He's going to get a real series of treatments, and he's probably going to be fine. More than likely, he'll be absolutely okay, and he'll come out and he'll just whatever to the entirety of the process that he's been going through. And so, like that and other things have basically kindled a frustrated feeling that I've had. This story is one of the few that I've seen that, or actually many that I've seen, though. It's a growing frustration that I have. It's just like this very instant, the vast majority of conservative, half of this country is raging against masks and lockdowns because of the cure vaccines. And there's a post that I had put out earlier. It's like the same science as the potential cure is also the same biological science that proves human evolution through natural selection, the complex physics to help us model the origins of the universe, and the chemistry that confirms the cause of the effects of global warming. Like this is the exact same science that all of these people say is fake, wrong, completely and totally garbage, but they will go to the hospital and benefit from all of those things. It's entirely frustrating because, I mean, pick one, right? Is prayer really the savior, and is your connection with God really the thing that can prevent you from the ailments? Then you shouldn't go to the hospital. You should just
That's why a lot of them won't take that tone, man. Like that's why those pastors are preying on people, is because they can accept both aspects of life, but they refuse to. And now they have to.
Just do as I say, not as I do. I mean, in all reality, these people are saying, don't go to the hospital. Don't get vaccinated. Don't do this. You should leave Facebook and go to Parlay or Parlor or whatever way you say that stupid thing. And then they continue posting on Facebook and Twitter and whatever, So, like, I mean, it's a series of manipulative marketing campaigns where I get the great treatment, but you guys, all you working class people, all whatever's, you shouldn't take these benefits. and healthcare is bad. And so like it's just frustrating. But like that was a good culmination of like a difficult thing that I've been just like kind of banging my head against for a while.
Fair enough. So my quick save is a lot less political this week, and it's called chicken rice porridge, or it's called chicken congee. I think that's how you say it.
Congee.
Congee?
Congee.
Congee.
Yeah, it's like the hard G.
No.
Okay. I'm gonna say it however I want to, but I'm telling you, this is the most amazing thing in the world. Like,
yeah,
I'm
my mother-in-law
serious.
makes it.
Oh my god, it is literally, and the best part about this, right, is it's basically a chicken rice porridge. But the best part about this is it's low carb, even though it's rice. And I say that because normally you take a cup of rice and then you put a cup and a quarter to a cup and a half of water in with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually your ratio. This is essentially 1 cup of rice to anywhere between 5 and 10 cups of water, depending on how thin you want it. So if you think about it, your ratio is
rice
going
soup.
down in fourths. Huh?
It's Chinese.
It's rice soup, man.
It is.
Chinese rice porridge.
But it's porridge. It actually is a porridge. It's like if you were to eat I don't know, grits, kind of like grits a little bit. If you eat thinner grits, that's an American thing, I guess. Maybe not a Keith thing. But all I know is I think grits are disgusting. But
All I could think of was the meme from 2016 where it was Bernie Sanders sitting at a table with a large guy saying, "Do they have grits up in this mother lover?" And he's like, "Yes, Mr. Sanders, they do."
Killer Mike. That was Killer.
Oh, is that Killer Mike? Killer Mike. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Killer Mike's great. Love that dude. But no, I got into this randomly because I Googled like healthy alternatives for breakfast, because now that I work at home, I can eat breakfast if I want, and it doesn't have to be an on-the-go type thing. And so, like, I've actually made this once a week, every week, except for this week, for the last, like, 2 months. And you can put different things in it. So, like, all I do is I take, usually it's like a mushrooms, green onions, or regular onions, and then I'm using almost like a whole thing of garlic. I just use tons of garlic, and I chop it up in thicker pieces so I can actually eat it. And then you put that in there with it, and then you put your chicken, and it has to be bone-in chicken. I tried boneless; it doesn't work very well. But you could take ground chicken, and it works. You could take ground, like sausage, ground turkey. You could put any of those in there, and it works. My favorite is the dark meat chicken, like a couple of chicken legs or a chicken thigh, or.
Are you cooking this in a pressure cooker?
No. I do this. I should do that in my pressure cooker, but
Dude,
I just put it on my stove,
15 minutes. Yeah, 15 minutes in a pressure cooker would blast us into oblivion of deliciousness.
I never thought about that, but you can't open the pressure cooker up and add spices into it. So like it's like halfway through, you put a little bit of fish oil, and you put a little bit of not olive oil. You put a little bit of soy sauce, and then a little bit of like sesame seed oil in there, and mix it around. But you don't do it to cook all the way through. You do it at the end.
Yep. Yeah, no, those seasonings and those flavors would be just fine after it's
ginger.
Cooked.
Fuck tons of ginger.
Oh yeah, my mother-in-law makes this pretty much anytime any of us is sick. This is so my mother-in-law is Filipino, and the Filipinos have their own version of this. This originated from China, Chinese rice porridge. And my mother-in-law, she has her own way of making it that I think she learned when she was working in Hong Kong, and it's just so good. And as you said, the ginger. So like. It's perfect alternative to chicken noodle soup because it's got, the electrolytes that you need, but it's also really easy on the system, and it's jam-packed full of nutrients. So it's amazing. I can even give it to my cats and I don't feel bad.
Yeah. Well, that was my quick save for the week. As we wrap up, the one question that we did not get to that I want to address real quickly here as we wrap up is, and we got 2 minutes, boys, but
tough one.
What do you think of the long-term ramifications if half the country believes Biden is illegitimate? I think 2 things. One, those that believe it's illegitimate but are only buying into it because they feel the pressure because they've been abused for 4 years will go back to normal within a year, and we won't see the majority think this is illogical. Those that do will continue to buy that bullet. But as COVID relents and starts to ease up here, as vaccines come out, we can actually start going back and doing stuff. Stop it, Keith. I'm going to take you off the screen. Jesus, I can see you. If we lighten it up and take it off, what will happen is people will have less time and care less about protesting because life goes back to normal. So I think those that want to continue will just make it this public outcry. Everybody else is going to go back. We'll be back to normal sooner than later. Don't quote me on it. I'm not putting money on it.
Yeah.
But that's what I feel.
Vaccinations will change things, whether or not that's a legitimate thing, 95% for the two most recent trials. But in all reality, it's really going to come down to 2022. At 2022 election, we'll see if momentum and motivation maintains for the most recent, record-breaking output of voting.
I don't think there's going to be major ramifications because, to be honest, those who are actively campaigning, calling it a fraud and pretending to be disenfranchised will always pretend they've been disenfranchised. They've been pretending that they're disenfranchised for 4 years. Meanwhile, they've been the loudest, most obnoxious group of sore winners that there ever were. And so I don't think it's going to change anything except make them more annoying.
Amen. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We'll be back next week on Monday, 10 p.m. Eastern. We don't know the topics. I'm not going to release them yet. Depends on how much effort I go into. I'm working on a couple more guests too, but we'll be back next week to begin our discussions essentially on what do we need to do to change everything. And if we're lucky, we'll get a science segment, but Ian's been lazy, so we'll see. Anyway, thank you all. Join us. Follow us over on Patreon if you want to see after show content, or subscribe on Facebook, Spreaker, or YouTube. Thank you all, and have an amazing night, everyone.